So what should the PMO be giving you from a finance perspective?
I think the most important factor to me with finances is the credibility of the source information. One of the issues that I see across multiple organizations is that they've got their project financing happening on spreadsheets, and then they are vulnerable to all of those spreadsheets having, slight errors in them, and they're also all over the place. There's no central visibility. So point one is creating a central repository for all of that information, getting off those Excel spreadsheets for your finance information. Point two, if it's possible, and many organizations struggle with this, but is to be reporting finance information off your source finance system so that it really has credibility with the CFO and the wider leadership of the organization. So by that, what I mean is if you have decent project accounting happening, then your business cases should be loaded into your finance system, and your project costs should be going into your finance system too. And therefore, it should be possible to integrate and pull your data across so that whenever you're looking at finance information on reports, the leadership team know that they're looking at finance information which is from the source system. And because it's from the source system, it has credibility. And if it's got credibility, then when you do achieve a project on time and to cost, it really means something. Whereas in many situations, projects that haven't been, there's a question mark. Has it really been delivered to cost, or is that just what you've put into your spreadsheet? So I think credibility is key to me, and that's to do with the source of finance information. I think the other thing is the level of complexity that you deal with. So generally, my philosophy is simple is always better. People actually often don't want to have finance columns broken down into too many different options. And OPEX and CAPEX is quite enough for most at this level. Of course, you want the detailed project costing to be broken down much more than that. But at a portfolio level, finance tends to be wanting to see each project CapEx and OPEX spend, because that is high level highlights for finance. They then want to be able to roll up and look at a portfolio level, either all of the portfolio, so I can see where are we in relation to the spend that we originally signed off at the beginning of the year, or alternatively a subset of the portfolio. Now, if you're on Excel spreadsheets, that becomes almost impossible. It's just almost too difficult to get that information into a central place where you can deliver that type of insight for the financial management of the organization, and particularly the portfolio.
So, Rupert, what would you say to the sponsor or leader who is feeling a little bit insecure about the financial governance and control of the PMO?
I think I would say persist. I think it is absolutely right and fair to ask the PMO to manage the control of finances and project finances. And the PMO really need to respond to that by going to the individual project and making sure that there is a robust, credible route for finance information to get into the ongoing dialogue and narrative of the program. And that doesn't mean we get a snapshot today. It means we get a snapshot today and the regular updates, probably monthly. I think weekly reporting on finances is not necessary and is overkill. But monthly is necessary, and those monthly updates need to be credible. And if necessary, if I'm that worried about it, I would say to the sponsor, make sure you get someone to audit that trail back to the source to make sure you're confident and comfortable that the finance information that's going through the PMO and into your reports is credible and would stand up to scrutiny.
Rupert, give us some insights. What are the sort of telltale signs, if you like, of finances being not as they should be or might be in a PMO?
In a PMO, I would say the telltale signs are inconsistent financial information being filled in. And what we see time and time again is portfolios. When you look at a portfolio level, you often see sort of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 programs or projects. Tier 1, your very big programs that are run by trained program managers, often have their own PMO as part of the program itself. And then tier 2 is your mid-tier programs. They're smaller, they tend to be sponsored by middle to senior management often. They often won't have a PMO as such, and so they're relying on support from the central PMO. And then tier 3 is more your BAU, smaller project type activities, if an organization is tracking tier 3. Tier 1 tends to be okay. If they have got a PMO as part of the program, then generally they tend to be okay. Tier 2, where you don't have someone day to day looking at the finances, is often a warning sign for me. So my expectation is that I'm going to have a lot more inconsistency of the finance data in the tier 2 programs than in the tier 1. And the sort of things I look out for is inconsistent. So firstly, inconsistent entries at that tier 1, tier 2 level particularly. Secondly, spikes. So for instance, either spikes or flat numbers. That's often a telltale sign for me. So, for instance, we were working with a company a couple of years ago where their top tier 1 programs had actually gone red. We did an analysis of what had turned them red, and it was a financial quirk in that the budget that had been set for each of those top 10 programs for that particular calendar year had been split evenly across the year. And of course, that's not how spend works. Spend tends to be up and down. And so when looking at that even picture, it just was an immediate red warning saying, no, that just doesn't look right. And I think you can tell quite a lot by looking at a forward-looking picture rather than a static waterfall picture of where we are today. Obviously, you look for variances in the where you are today numbers. But when you look at history, the curve for cost versus committed versus budget versus actual, when you look at those curves, there's normally a relatively consistent view or picture you get. And it's not that difficult for the red warning lights to go off when you see an unusual kink in one of those curves. So I would look out for those unusual kinks in the curve and inconsistent entry points, inconsistent levels of entry.